The gentle buzz of the washing machine resonated throughout the house as I folded the final piece of laundry. Ryan's football jersey, still a bit moist from the dryer, rested on top of the pile. I ran my hand over the bold blue and white fabric, feeling the number 27 stitched clearly on the back. That number had always been his favorite, the same one his father had worn during his college football days many years ago. Ryan was everything I had hoped for in a son: strong, focused, and compassionate. At 19, he was excelling as a college athlete, a key player on his university's football team. But beyond that, he was a genuinely good person, someone who carried a quiet self-assurance and a big heart wherever he went. Now, at 44, life had its ups and downs, and Ryan and I had learned to navigate it together. His father, my ex-husband, had faded from the picture when Ryan was still a child, leaving me to juggle both parental roles. While it hadn't always been easy, I wouldn't trade the bond Ryan and I had developed for anything. We were a team in every sense of the word. Later that evening, the aroma of lasagna filled the kitchen as I set the table. Ryan had sent me a message earlier to say that practice had run late, so dinner was waiting for him, warm in the oven. When he finally walked in, his cheeks pink from the cold, I could see the fatigue on his face. "Hey, Mom," he greeted, offering a tired but sincere smile. He tossed his gym bag by the door and headed straight for the kitchen. "Rough practice?" I asked, as I poured him a glass of water. "You have no idea," he answered, slumping into a chair. "Coach had us running drills for hours. I thought my legs were going to give out." I placed the lasagna on the table, watching as he served himself a generous portion. His appetite always impressed me. Between his practices, games, and workout routines, it seemed like I was constantly preparing something to fuel his endless energy. "How's the team shaping up for the big game next weekend?" I asked. "Yeah," he nodded, taking another bite. "We're pretty solid. We've got a tough opponent this year, but Coach thinks we can pull it off, and I think we can too." I smiled, propping my chin in my hand as I listened. Talking football had always been second nature for us, ever since Ryan was old enough to throw a ball. Watching him get excited as he talked about plays and strategies was one of my greatest joys. After dinner, Ryan leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms above his head. "Thanks for dinner, Mom. You always know how to make it perfect." "It's what I do," I replied with a grin. "But don't think you're off the hook for dishes." He groaned playfully, but got up to start clearing the plates. As he moved around the kitchen, his action smooth and assured, I felt a swell of pride. He had grown into such an incredible young man, and while I liked to think I had something to do with it, much of it was simply who Ryan was at his core. Later that evening, as I sat curled up with a book on the couch, Ryan joined me. He flopped down on the other side, stretching his long legs across the cushions. "Mom," he began, his voice quieter now, "do you ever feel like things have changed between us?" I looked up and met his eyes. What do you mean? He shrugged, running a hand through his messy hair. I don't know. It's just, we've been through so much together, you and me. And now that I'm older, I see more. How much you've done for me, how much you've sacrificed. I set my book down, giving him my full attention. Ryan, raising you has never felt like a sacrifice, not once. If anything, it's been my greatest joy. I hope you know that. I do, he replied quickly, but then his voice softened. Still, I feel like I owe you so much, and I don't think I say thank you enough. My heart softened. You thank me every day, Ryan, just by being the person you are. That's all I've ever wanted. He leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. I want to make you proud. You already have, I reassured him. More than you'll ever know. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the ticking of the clock the only sound in the room. Simple moments like these, unhurried and peaceful, were my favorite. They reminded me that even as Ryan built his own life, we would always share this deep connection, this unbreakable bond. Eventually, Ryan stood and stretched. I'm going to hit the shower. Thanks for the talk, Mom. I really needed that. Anytime, I said, watching as he headed upstairs. As I sat alone in the quiet living room, I reflected on our conversation. Ryan's gratitude and love were a constant reminder that despite the difficulties, I had done something right. I gave thanks to the universe for giving me a son with a heart as big as his dreams. The sound of the shower upstairs brought me back to the present, and I smiled to myself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more laughter, and more moments shared with the person who made everything worthwhile. For that, I was endlessly thankful. The next morning, I woke to the scent of coffee drifting through the house. It was a rare treat. Usually, I was the one up early, bustling around the kitchen while Ryan squeezed in a few more minutes of sleep. I pulled on my robe and made my way downstairs, where I found him standing at the counter, his hair still damp from the shower, holding 2 steaming mugs. Good morning, he greeted, his smile warm and easy as he handed me a cup. I figured I'd let you sleep in for once. I chuckled, accepting the coffee. You're spoiling me. Maybe you deserve to be spoiled, he replied, his tone light but sincere. You do so much for me. The least I can do is make you coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows and bathing the room in a soft glow. Ryan seemed more relaxed today, his usual post-practice fatigue replaced with a lighter, more energetic mood. As we sipped our coffee, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me with a thoughtful expression. You look nice this morning, he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar tone. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. I'm still in my pajamas. He shrugged. You always look nice, but today especially. Flattery will get you everywhere, I teased, though his words left a warm feeling in my chest. Ryan smiled and leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I mean it. You're incredible, Mom. Beautiful, smart, strong. You're everything I could ever hope to be when I'm older. His unexpected compliment left me momentarily speechless. That's sweet of you to say, Ryan, but you know I'm proud of you for who you are, not who you think you have to be. He grinned. Well, if I can be half as amazing as you, I'll be doing pretty well. I shook my head, trying to deflect his compliments, but there was no denying how much they warmed me inside. Ryan had always been kind, but lately his words carried a deeper meaning, as if he was trying to express something more than just gratitude. As the days passed, I began to notice more of these moments, whether it was a casual remark about how I looked in a new shirt or a thoughtful gesture like filling my car's gas tank after borrowing it. Ryan's care and attention seemed to grow in subtle but undeniable ways. There was a new depth to his affection that made my heart swell and left me feeling both touched and a little overwhelmed. One evening, as we watched TV together on the couch, he suddenly turned to me with a serious expression. You know, Mom, I think you don't give yourself enough credit for everything you do, he said, surprising me. You work so hard. You take care of everyone, and you still manage to look amazing. He blushed slightly. I don't think I've ever told you this, but you're kind of my hero. I blinked, caught off guard. Ryan, that's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me. He smiled, his gaze steady. It's the truth. You're incredible, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. Thank you, I said softly, my voice thick with emotion. That means the world to me. His words stayed with me long after we had gone to bed that night. Ryan's kindness and attentiveness were a reminder of how deep our bond had become over the years. But there was something else too, something unspoken that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The next weekend, Ryan offered to take me out for dinner. My treat, he insisted, wanting to thank me for everything I had done for him. He chose a cozy little Italian restaurant downtown, a place we hadn't visited in years. As we sat across from each other, the candlelight flickering between us, I couldn't help but marvel at how grown up he looked, how composed and confident he had become. You know, he said, as we waited for our dessert, I think this is the first time we've had a night out like this in a long time, just the two of us. It has been a while, I agreed, but it's nice. I'm glad we did this. Me too, he said, hesitating for a moment before adding, I hope you know how much you mean to me, Mom. Not just as my mom, but as, well, as you. I was confused for a moment, but he nodded. You're an amazing person, and I don't think I say that enough. For a brief second, I didn't know how to respond. The sincerity in his eyes took my breath away. Thank you, Ryan. That really means a lot. On our way back to the car that night, with his arm casually draped over my shoulders, I felt a sense of quiet happiness. Whatever was changing in our relationship, it was grounded in love and trust, and for that, I was deeply grateful. Later, as I prepared for bed, I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. There was a lightness to my expression that hadn't been there in years, a sense of quiet joy that came from knowing I was loved, not just as a mother, but as a person. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to simply bask in that feeling. Finally, the day of Ryan's big competition arrived. The entire week leading up to it had been filled with anticipation and nervous energy. Ryan had immersed himself in preparation, spending hours practicing, reviewing strategies, and even adjusting his diet to ensure peak performance. Through it all, I had been his biggest supporter, providing encouragement in every way I could. That morning, I stood by the kitchen counter, packing his favorite snacks into a small cooler. He appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his team uniform, looking every bit the confident young man I had watched grow. "Morning, champ," I greeted him, handing him a bottle of water. "Morning, Mom," he replied, his smile warm, though there was a hint of nervousness in his eyes. "You're coming, right?" I gave him a look. "Of course, I'm coming. You didn't think I'd miss your big day, did you?" He relaxed and reached out to playfully ruffle my hair. "Good. I don't think I can do this without you." "You can do anything, Ryan," I said, my voice calm. "I'll be in the stands, cheering you on every step of the way." By the time we arrived at the stadium, the atmosphere was electric. The roar of the crowd, the noise of the teammates, and the thick air of excitement all combined to create an intense energy that had my heart racing. I found a seat near the front, clutching my bag tightly as I waited for the game to begin. When Ryan's team ran onto the field, the crowd erupted in cheers. My eyes were locked on him as he moved with confidence and determination. Watching Ryan play was like witnessing the culmination of years of hard work. Every pass, tackle, and strategic move was a reflection of his dedication. As the game progressed, the score stayed tight, with each team fiercely fighting for dominance. Ryan was everywhere, his presence on the field commanding and steadfast. With every play, I felt a swell of pride that almost brought tears to my eyes. When the final whistle blew, marking their hard-earned victory, I couldn't hold back my excitement. I jumped to my feet, cheering louder than anyone else, my heart bursting with joy. After the game, the team was surrounded by fans and well-wishers, but Ryan immediately headed straight for me. He was sweaty, his hair clinging to his forehead, yet his smile was brighter than the stadium lights. "You were amazing," I exclaimed, pulling him into a tight hug. "Thanks, Mom," he mumbled, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "But I couldn't have done it without you." We left after the celebrations wound down, both of us still high from the win. Ryan was quieter than usual during the drive, gazing out the window, lost in thought. I assumed he was just processing the day's events. Later that evening, as we sat on the couch with cups of tea, the silence between us grew heavy. Finally, Ryan placed his mug down and turned toward me, his expression serious. "Mom," he began, his voice calm but steady, "there's something I need to tell you." I tilted my head, a flicker of concern rising in my chest. What is it, sweetheart? He hesitated, running his hand through his hair. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I don't know how to say it without sounding ridiculous. You can tell me anything, I reassured him, though my heart began to race. He took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto mine. I love you, Mom. Not just as my mom, but as you, as the person you are. His words hung in the air, startling and heavy. My mind scrambled to make sense of what he had just said. Ryan, I whispered, what are you saying? He continued, his tone sincere. I'm saying that you're everything to me. You're kind, strong, beautiful. You've been there for me in ways no one else ever has. And I don't know when it happened, but I realized my feelings for you are deeper than they should be. I stared at him, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely think. His eyes were filled with a vulnerability I rarely saw, and it left me breathless. I know this probably sounds crazy, he added quickly, his words tumbling out, but I had to tell you. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. Ryan, I said, reaching for his hand, this is a lot to take in. I know, he said, his grip tightening on mine. And I don't expect you to feel the same way. I just needed you to know. I took a deep breath, my emotions swirling, unable to be put into words. You mean so much to me, Ryan, and I'm so thankful for the bond we share. But this is complicated. He nodded, his face a mix of hope and resignation. I understand. I just didn't want to hide how I feel anymore. In the silence that followed, I realized the depth of Ryan's bravery in confessing something so profound. And while I wasn't sure where this revelation would lead, one thing was certain. Our connection was unbreakable, rooted in a love that had survived every challenge life had thrown at us. The house was still after Ryan's heartfelt confession, the only sound being the soft hum of the heater pushing away the evening chill. I sat on the couch, my mind spinning with emotions and questions that had no answers yet. Ryan had retreated to his room to shower, leaving me to process everything he had said. His words echoed in my mind, carrying a mixture of tenderness and weight. When he came back downstairs, his damp hair falling over his forehead, he looked more at ease. The tension that had marked his face earlier had faded, though a quiet intensity remained in his eyes. You okay? I asked gently, breaking the silence. Yeah, he nodded. I feel lighter, I guess. Like I finally said something I've been holding on to for a long time. I managed a small smile, placing my hand on his arm. I'm glad you felt like you could share that with me. It means a lot. Ryan gave me a grateful look before leaning back on the couch. The game really took it out of me, he said after a moment, wincing as he flexed his shoulder. I'm sore in places I didn't even know could get sore. I chuckled softly. That's the price of being a star athlete. He grinned, though the wince that followed revealed the ache in his body. You know, he said, his tone light, We used to take baths together when I was little. You always said it was the best way to relax after a long day. I raised an eyebrow, amused. You're not suggesting we relive that, are you? Why not? He replied, with a playful shrug. We're both exhausted. A hot bath could help us unwind. His suggestion caught me off guard, and for a moment I didn't know how to respond. But before I could say anything, I laughed softly and shook my head. I think I'll pass on the bath. But I'll tell you what, I've gotten pretty good at giving massages over the years. If your shoulders are bothering you, I could help with that. Ryan's eyes lit up. Seriously? That would be amazing. Thanks, Mom. Go grab a towel to lay on, I instructed. I'll meet you in the living room. While Ryan went upstairs, I prepared some lotion and cleared a spot on the floor. When he returned, he spread the towel out and lay face down, his head resting on his folded arms. I couldn't help but smile at how eager he seemed, like a child waiting for a treat. Kneeling beside him, I began working on his shoulders, massaging the tight knots that had formed from hours of intense play. Ryan let out a contented sigh as his muscles slowly relaxed under my hands. You've got magic hands, he murmured, his voice muffled against the towel. I laughed softly. Years of practice. You're not the first football player I've had to work on, you know. Still, he said, turning his head slightly to look at me, this feels incredible. Thank you, Mom. As I moved down to his lower back to work out the tension there, he glanced up again, his expression soft and affectionate. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd survive, I teased gently, but I'm glad I can be here for you. When I finished, I patted his shoulder. There you go, all set. You should feel a little looser now. Ryan sat up, rolling his shoulders and stretching his arms. I feel like a new man, he said, grinning. Then, to my surprise, he leaned in and kissed my cheek. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. The gesture caught me off guard, but it warmed my heart nonetheless. You're welcome, sweetheart, I said, brushing his hair out of his face. As Ryan gathered the towel and headed back upstairs, I sat there for a moment, reflecting on the closeness we shared. His confession earlier had added a new layer to our relationship, one I was still trying to understand. But moments like this, simple, loving, and free of complexity, reminded me of the unbreakable bond we had. The bath suggestion, playful as it was, highlighted something I hadn't fully realized. Ryan's need for connection was deeper than I had thought. And while I wasn't sure where this new chapter would take us, I was certain of one thing. We would face it together with love and understanding at the heart of everything we did.